Hi, good evening. Welcome to Unsuited. We're on the third season and this is our third episode. The entire season is dedicated to talking to women in law. Well, today we're talking to two women who've traversed very different journeys and both currently enjoy leadership positions at in their respective organizations. We're going to talk to them about perceptions and opinions, well, not their own, but those of others. How should we allow these to land on us? How shall we internalize external chatter? And what is the best way to build inner resilience? We're talking to Fereshte Sethna, the senior partner from DMD Advocates. She's Bombay based, and to Jolly Abraham, who currently leads the legal function at True North, a private equity fund. Good evening, Jolly and Fereshte. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Tanisha. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for being here.
Pleasure.
Hi, Fereshte. Hi, Jolly.
Hi, Vikas. Hi, Tanisha. Thanks for having me.
All
Hello.
right. We'll talk a little bit about each of you briefly, and then we'll head to the first segment where Vikas will ask you a bunch of questions and we'll kind of chat through those. Fereshte, starting with you, you kickstarted your career with Mullah and Mullah, moving on then to counsel practice, and then as an in-house counsel to some of the well-known PCI clubs. Is that right?
That's correct, Tanisha.
Okay. And then you co-founded Dutt Menon and Dunmossett in 1998.
Well, it was Dunmossett in 98, and then we went on to effectively create Duttman and Dunmossett. That's correct.
Okay.
That was later in 2005-6, I think it was.
All right. And ever since you've been kind of at the helm of things there at the firm.
That's right. I share that position with another colleague of mine out of the Delhi office.
Okay, super. All right. Over to you, Jolly. You have a very interesting trajectory because you actually started as an HR professional because you had studied with the Tata Institute of Social Sciences and then were working with HUL. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah.
And then you moved on to the International Justice Mission, where you really enjoyed the work and sort of the facets of the legal world that you were introduced to. And that's when you decided that you actually wanted to study the law, taking it up as early as late, depends on how you're going to perceive that, at the age of 26 and finishing only at 29, right?
That is right.
Then you started off as an associate at Desai and Devanji, a law firm based in Bombay, spent a long time, made it to partnership with them, and here you are today, heading a private equity firm on the legal side. That's an interesting journey. Thanks for sharing that with us. All right, Vikas, over to you. The introductions have been made.
Great, thanks, Tanisha. So we're going to get straight into it. I will do alphabetical order. So Fereshte first. When building your career, to what extent do you have control over how others perceive you, and to what extent does it really matter?
Interesting question, Vikas. Thank you. So let me start by saying that perception is no doubt something that is created around us. And the level of attention that we pay to it, each individually, I'm sure, varies from individual to individual. But broadly, I think perception, insofar as concerns a legal professional, sits principally within three categories. The first is if you are a direct client-facing lawyer, the perception that your clients carry. The second, if you are a litigator, then it is typically what your judges carry. And the third, no doubt, is what your peers carry. Now, traversing all of those three genres, as it were, as a litigator, is a very interesting journey. But that journey, I must tell you, for some of us, is one that has to be traveled extremely cautiously. For the reason that if you actually get into having to spend time on concerning yourself with perceptions, then you might perhaps not get your job done. I come from the school of thought where you allow your actions to speak for themselves. You allow your work to speak for itself. And you do not concern yourself with the din around you. Because the only thing that you bring as a legal professional to the table is your own sense of what it is that you believe you can deliver up for your client. And if you stay true to that, then to my mind, perceptions must fade into oblivion. And perceptions should under no circumstances drive what it is that you do, so long as you know that you are on track. And in terms of knowing whether or not you are on track, I think that really has to come intuitively, as it must to all professionals, because that is really ultimately what it is that your clients will look for. It is your ability to navigate them through times of crises. It is about your ability to maneuver through situations that are inevitably thrown at you day in, day out in terms of the challenges that you will typically face, whether you are a corporate lawyer or a litigator or any such format of the types of lawyer that you could be. And obviously, at the end of the day, I think it has to be a commonality of all of these elements that come together that permit for you to move forward as a professional. But my mantra is, do not concern yourself with perception. You have to build for yourself what it is that you believe you can build best, unfazed by any comment, criticism, judgment, because to my mind, nobody around you has the right to judge you except for yourself. And if you're true to yourself, then you're on track in my book.
Some great advice. It's not easy to follow, and especially when you're in a profession like the law and trying to build a career from scratch. But it's a great mantra to live by. Jolly, I want to bring you in on that as well, because obviously, Fereshte has built her own career, and it's kind of a leader in her field now. You started off in one area, shifted to from HR to law, so you would have had your own kind of perceptions to deal with. So what's your take on how much control do you really have over others, and how much does it really matter?
The short answer to that question, Vikas, is that you have no control over what others think about you. You can control what you do and what you say and what you bring to the table, but you can't control what others think about you. And while I like the way Fereshte, broke it up in terms of how your clients perceive you, how your colleagues perceive you, and how the courts perceive you if you're a litigator. Those are three interesting buckets to think about. But you do your best to serve your client's interest in whatever situation you are in, and you do that with respect for others, and you do that with the best that you've got. Beyond that, how somebody will perceive that is a function really of how they think and their experiences, and and so that you cannot control. But over a period of time, I've seen it add up, right? If you're doing good work, it catches up with you in the sense that the perceptions, you influence the perceptions to that extent, and so that's it's a good thing that you're able to you have input into the perceptions, but you don't control what finally happens. But beyond the point, it doesn't matter how others perceive you, because of course it matters how your clients perceive you, and they should have that. They should feel comfortable that they know that you are representing their interests and that you are doing what is right by them. And so that's important, and it's important to build that trust and that relationship, and that they should perceive you as someone who is acting for them and in their corner. But that's a function of what you do and what you bring to the table.
And is that something that's changed over time? That relationship to perception and how much you should really care about it. Like, have you seen that evolve over your career from when you were young to where you are today?
I don't think so. My mantra is just go in and do your best every day, right? I have not thought about how is somebody else perceiving this, or I have not let that be the deciding factor on why, on doing something or not doing something. That's not my reason for doing what I do. I do it because I believe that's the right thing to do. And sometimes that gets perceived differently than, I intended. And then maybe that, necessitates a conversation or to kind of smooth things over if that's required. But that's not going to, I'm not thinking about how is somebody going to receive me when I do this, when I do it. And I don't think that has changed with time. That's just been the way I am.
Mm. And I think something common, the next question, something common to both of you is, you both seem to have a strong sense of, inner resilience, and grit and perseverance. So how important has that been in your journeys? And is it and how did you build it? Is it something you've had from young, or you had to build it, step by step? So Fereshte, I'm going to bring you in on that one first.
Thank you, Vikas. That's certainly an important facet of being a lawyer. I think you have to be able to hold your own. That's very critical. Because if you can't do that, then why is the client going to be able to trust you? Why are your peers going to want to engage with you? And why would the judges want to hear anything that you have to say anyway? So I think in terms of a starting point, your ability to effectively, what you call the inner resilience, your ability to effectively navigate all and sundry is, and obviously with regard to ensuring that under no circumstances will you ever find yourself in a situation where you don't want yourself to be. I think that is critical. So if you can effectively ensure that you are in both of those places, then I do think that it is a straight and narrow pathway for yourself as a legal professional. But let me perhaps flag off what I believe are important drivers, at least for me, what has been an important driver on the bit about inner resilience. I take away from two works which I hold extremely critical in all of my thought processes and have in fact held me in good stead since as far back as I can recall. I think it was back in school, early days in school. I think it must have been age 10 when I was introduced by my grandparents to the poem If by Rudyard Kipling. I do believe that the poem has stayed with me through life. It reverberates with me in my every thought and action, even today. I'm sure all of you know that poem extremely well. But if I can just quote maybe one or two sentences, stanzas, whatever you call from it.
That'd be great.
It is, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so on it goes. And if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, then yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son, is how he ends it. So I think those are words that have stayed with me. And then there has been desiderata. Again, for those who are familiar with that, that's Max Ehrmann, 1948. He actually penned those lines back in 1927. And again, he spoke some very critical lines that, to my mind, hold certainly me in good stead. And I think these would apply to every legal professional, because as a legal professional, there's a job that we have to do. And that's not an easy job, because when you are out there seeking to deliver justice for your client, there's a lot at stake. And in order for you to be able to with that single-minded devotion and diligence and sincerity, continue to pursue all that is required of you. I think if you look back at those words that go back to, and they are forever words in my book, but they are, with all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world is where it ends up. And that is what you have to navigate your client through, because ultimately you're representing the human being. It may be a corporate, but ultimately at the end of the day, there is a person behind it. And everybody wants to have hope. Everybody wants to have belief. Everybody wants to have that sense of that there will be justice at the end of the day. And how do you ensure that they understand what it is that is, going to effectively become available to them? I think for that, I would again draw from the first stanza of Desiderata, which is, go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. Now, in effect, if you apply that to a lot of situations which you encounter every day in your professional life, and for clients, you will find that those words fit every situation that I have ever encountered. So I think ultimately, if you take away from what I think are giants in terms of what they laid out, in terms of the messaging that they laid out for us, whether it's Rudyard Kipling or it is Max Ehrmann, I think if you live by the principles that they imbibe in you, that they inculcate in you, I do believe that is the pathway to building inner resilience, Vikas, to answer your question. I think that was a bit of a long answer, but I want you to have the thought processes around that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the second one especially, is very much, from, you could sense a kind of meditative point of view around that as well. That, how do you still your mind and have a belief that it's still going to be okay at the end of the day. Jolly, your kind of interpretation of that, how important has inner resilience been in your journey, and how have you built that over time?
Resilience is very important. You face a lot of difficult situations, right? And you're trying to navigate your client through complexity, through difficulties, and what you need to bring to the table. I think one good piece of advice I received at some earlier on in my career was about being unemotional about what you're doing, right? Not getting, maybe it kind of links into some of the things that Fereshte was saying in terms of you detach yourself from the brief, and be logical and analytical about it. And it's so when you're in negotiating something, if you feel personally slighted, you will react differently than if you know that you're detached, relatively detached, and it's somebody's trying to get to you. You don't let them get to you because you're relatively detached, and you're able to deal with the issue and respond to the issue. It's so that detachment is important, that flexibility is important, because in order to be resilient, because you have to learn to go with the flow sometimes, right? Things may not go the way you had intended, so there is you need to develop some flexibility, and while you're being flexible, you have to stay focused, because you have to be clear on what your goal is and what it is that you are intending to achieve for yourself and for your client. So you focus, flexibility, detachment. These are things that have helped me build resilience, and deal with difficult circumstances over my career. I think they've been very helpful, and at some level there is a self-confidence that you can that you have to develop for yourself, right? That you are sure of why you're doing what you're doing, and that goes a long way in staying resilient.
Mm. And is that something you can only build yourself, or is it something that others can help you with?
I'm sure others can help you with it. It certainly helps when you have feedback, and that helps you to realize what your strengths are and kind of build on those. It certainly helps to have that, but it's not necessary. We tend to think that it's necessary to have cheerleaders around us telling us that we're doing a great job. It's great if you have that, but that's not necessary for you to be able to build your confidence, and you know that you're doing a good job, and you know that you're doing the right thing. You know that you're serving the interests of the client. You may not be able to see the results yet, but you're doing that, and you know you're on that path. And that's whether or not somebody pats you on the back. If you can be sure of that, and because of your own experience, what you've done in the past, what you're bringing to the table, you can be sure of that. So that's, yeah, I'd say focus, flexibility, detachment. These are the three things that you need to have to be resilient in this profession.
Yeah. Okay, super. Fereshte, I'm going to come back to you with a line like I mentioned before, I've borrowed from you, which is, do not be conformed. The world is your oyster. So on that basis, what advice could you give to the next generation, of budding lawyers?
Well, thank you for that, because I have to admit that I come from a school of nonconformists. I was cast adrift early in life with the freedom of choice, both at the level of my education, so the choices that I would make, and then when I chose the law, of course, the choice of field within the law. I chose, as some may know, maritime law to begin with. It was a very interesting field. It was something that allowed you to do international work in the early 90s, sitting in India. And I recall in very early days engaging with Greek ship owners and Turkish ship owners, all of whom would be completely astounded by the fact that there was a woman sitting in India who could effectively be advising them, sitting wherever they were, on complex issues of maritime law back then. Well, not so complex, but issues of maritime law. Let me leave it there. The point that I'm trying to make here is that maritime law was not something that was on top of the charts for anyone who was choosing to practice law generally. And you could see that in the courts. You could see that on the various fora that we would participate in, whether it was pure academia around shipping law, or it was in the realm of any kind of forum that was for exchange of views or otherwise. And the fact was that when you engaged in those forums, you very clearly knew that you could effectively deliver to the highest. When I say to the highest, what I am really seeking to emphasize here is there was never a distinction drawn in that fraternity as to whether you were a woman or a man. You were treated as an equal. I have to say that there was just nobody who, once they heard what you had to say, would have a second question about what it is that you were going to be bringing to the table. And that, I think, is the big takeaway for me, because in those very early years where women in India were few and far between in the profession of law, we had the luxury, I would say, of making our choices in terms of areas that we would choose to practice in. And the fact is that those were choices that held you out in very good stead for life. What I am therefore saying is, you don't need necessarily conform. You don't need necessarily plod the treaded paths. You don't need necessarily look to what it is that others have done and strictly follow what has been laid out before you, because you can break away. And if you break away, ultimately, if you're passionate about what it is that you're doing, then there's just no stopping you. And you know, a few years into the practice of maritime law, I decided that I wanted to move into a wider world, because having pretty much learned what there was to know, I thought it was time to expand into a wider world. And I have to say that that was the easiest choice that I ever made, and perhaps the best choice that I ever made, because the fact was that I moved into genres of law that back in my maritime law days, I would not have ever conceived of working in the zones of. And again, to borrow from what you just said, the world is your oyster. You know, you sort of build it around whatever it is that you want to do, and there is no glass ceiling in the law eventually. That's the one big clear conclusion that I have drawn. Unlike in the corporate world, in the legal world, in the legal professional world, there is no glass ceiling. That is the wondrous reality of this profession. And so for all of those young budding lawyers who are looking to make a mark for themselves, you must know that there's absolutely nothing that can stop you except for yourself. So if you're going to be your roadblock, then there's very little that anyone can do to help you. But otherwise, know that there are no roadblocks in terms of what it is that you can achieve. So believe in yourself and move forward, and non-conformism is the answer.
Yeah, great words, actually. I think you're right in terms of, at times we can be our own roadblocks. So it's like, I think even what Johnny was saying earlier, like you just got to believe in yourself and keep going, and you will hit barriers. It's not like life will always be easy, but you've got to push your own barriers to be successful. So Johnny, throwing that one back at you, because obviously you've not led a conformist kind of career either. You started off in HR at Unilever, NGO, and then in your mid-20s decided to take up the law. So what advice would you give to the kind of next generation with regards to conformism and having the world be your oyster?
Yeah, there is no reason to conform. There is absolutely no reason to conform with anything that you don't want to do. So you're right. I went from HR to working with an NGO, and that's when I got interested in the law and I studied the law. So when I went into law school, I was older than most of my batchmates. When I became an associate at a law firm, I was older than every other 0-year PQE lawyer there. And I was coming in with non-law experience. I had 7 years of non-law experience before I became a lawyer. But all of that was nobody valued that, right? I mean, I was still treated as a junior first-year lawyer, and but the good thing is, you whatever I had done before that, whatever I did before I became a lawyer, I immersed myself very completely in that. So I had done union negotiations in a factory as part of my work at Unilever. I had been, I did a very interesting variety of work when I was at the IJM. So all of those experiences that I did, that I had, I immersed myself completely in them. I learned from them. None of them had anything to do with the law. But the law is just such a wide array, right? It covers just about every aspect of your life. If you're buying a house, there is law involved. If you're getting married, there's law involved. If you're, it's corporate law is one aspect of it, but that's just one aspect, right? There's every aspect of your life. There is something law related. And so when I became a lawyer and I started practicing law, I knew nothing about corporate law when I started off as a 0 PQE lawyer. While I had worked in companies and I had worked in corporate organizations, I knew nothing about the corporate law. So I remember, for example, with the when I at Desai Devanji, I would go to the partners in the first couple of weeks, and say, listen, I'm here. If there's anything you have for me, let me know. Give it to me. So eventually, at some point, one of my partners told me, go pick up the FEMA manual and read FEMA 20 and make, and read that. That's going to be important. I don't have anything for you right now, but that's going to be important. And I remember reading FEMA 20 at the time, and I couldn't understand it. I read it and I kept reading it, and I have somewhere on the servers at Desai and Devanji, there will be a note that I had prepared where I was trying to write down and kind of make notes on what I understood. And I didn't understand because it was, I had learned the law. I had a qualification. I had done 3 years of that. And then I come in here and I'm reading this law, which I've never read before, talking about concepts that I didn't understand. So from there, to a point where today I understand FEMA 20 very, very, very well. That has been a journey, right? So everything that you did, and I spent hours trying to read FEMA 20 and understand on day one. But I didn't get it. I didn't understand it because I'd never seen it work and I didn't understand what the practicalities of it are. But every experience I had before then, whether it was in HR or at the NGO, all of those things, kind of made me a better lawyer because none of them had anything to do with the law beyond the point. Of course, like I said, everything has something to do with the law. But the fact that I had negotiated with a union helped me to understand employment matters. The fact that I had been at a police station helped me to understand, some aspects of, when I'm doing a due diligence, I'm looking at an FIR or something like that. And I have a much better concept. It's not just a random legal concept. It's something that I could apply. So the world is your oyster. You can do exactly what you want. I decided to become a lawyer later in life than most others. So my colleagues were not at the same age as me. So I was having a baby when my colleagues hadn't gotten married. So it's a different experience. And it doesn't matter because you bring your best self to the table, and you everything that you do, whatever that may be, you learn that well and you do that well, and that will build you up to do better at whatever you do. So everything that you do today is building block for what you're going to do tomorrow, right? So you don't have to live in the future or in anticipation of the future. Live today and live it well, and do what you have in your hands well. Take advantage of every opportunity you have now and give it your best today. And whatever you do today is going to help you do something else tomorrow. You may not see it now, but in hindsight, you'll make connections that you never thought possible. And that's so true for me. And so it doesn't matter whether the people around you are like you, whether they have the same experiences as you. It doesn't matter because you are bringing your experiences and your best self to the table, and that gives you a very unique perspective. And so the world is in fact your oyster, and you can like I found the law late in life, right? I didn't find it when most other people do right after high school. But I'm glad that happened, and I'm glad that I got to do all these other interesting things, and I can bring all of that into what I do as a lawyer. And so I do think that helped me get elevated sooner than I would have otherwise. The fact that while I was always treated as a 2-year, 3-year, 4-year PQE lawyer, the fact that I had all this other experience helped me and gave me a much more rounded perspective. So you don't have to conform. You don't have to, I could have said, I've done HR and that's where I need to be and I need to continue there. But I made a shift and it's worked out well, and I'm glad it did. And I'm sure it will for others as well, irrespective of the experiences you've been through.
Yeah, I think it's great advice by both of you, because also what it seems that you haven't got caught up in the rat race, because especially when you're a youngster getting into the law, it's very much got to get to partner as quickly as possible because that's the dream, that's the top of the mountain, and then you get into a very competitive race with the idea of what it is to be a successful lawyer. As both you've done, you've kind of seen what's of interest to you, like brought your best to the table, master that, and then move on to other interesting areas all that focus of how do you be your best and how do you give your best to your clients. I think that's great advice for even, young lawyers to really not get caught up in that rat race of, I need to make partner, within 8 years, 10 years, 12 years. And they forget that, all the learnings from the journey itself.
Also, if I may chip in, I think just the open-mindedness to constantly ask yourself and examine, is this working for me or not? Am I enjoying this or not? Is this the path I want to be on, or am I open to trying something else? And then to actually have that open-mindedness to try something else, right? Even for Fereshte, she's actually gone from a law firm to counsel practice where she had her own chamber. Then she went to the in-house space, then started her own firm. So I guess you have to try it all to know, what really fits for you, and don't hesitate to try, right? That's also a big takeaway from both your journeys, that you feel like the switch, you make the switch, because like you both said in different ways, I think essentially our only limitation is only pretty much what we believe. So all our self-limiting beliefs are usually self-created. So it's a good way to gun that down. Thank you both. To the last question of this segment, and I think you both are going to have very different responses, but I can't wait to hear. We'll talk a little bit about work-life balance. Now, is that even a thing? Is it a myth? Why does one need any balance? Because is work not part of life? And, is life extracted from work? Like, we just want to hear all about that. So, firstly, maybe you want to start first.
Well, let me answer you in the only way I know, which is work is play, and play is work. And therefore, I don't understand this concept of work-life balance.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what you mean by play. For those who are the uninitiated, please initiate us into that concept.
If you're passionate about what you do, you absolutely love it. What's the work about it? I don't see myself at work on a given day for 20 hours because I'm just enjoying myself. I'm just thoroughly enjoying myself. So what's the balance that I need to bring in? I'm not sure.
Fair, okay.
And life, I take it, what you mean by life is enjoy. What you mean by work is, the drudgery perhaps, but I don't see the element of drudgery. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Understood. No, and that's actually it's an excellent point you make. Thank you. Because we're often told that work, like you rightly said, right? Work is supposed to be more serious, more boring. It's a thing that you have to do. And then the rest of it is your life, that after those 8 hours, then go out there and have a blast. Because that's what we're often taught, right? We don't view it the way you just said we should have probably. Again, takes one back to the question of, are you really enjoying what you do? Is this really what you want to do?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Jolly, how about you?
Yeah, I echo what Fereshte is saying. If you enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't feel like work. I think for me, while I completely agree with that, and I do enjoy my work and I work very long hours and it doesn't matter to me, but the balance that I strive to bring is the balance between the time I spend on my work, which I enjoy very much, and the time that I spend with my family, which also I enjoy very much. And finding that balance there is the challenge, really. It's not easily achieved in a profession like law because it is demanding in terms of time. It takes time to do things. It takes time to think through things. It takes time to analyze things. It takes time to read, write the way you need to precisely. So it does take a lot of your time. And my family has been very patient with me over the years in terms of, but then at one point in time I realized that if I'm not spending time with them, they're going to figure out their own coping mechanisms on how they're going to spend time. They're not sitting around waiting for me to be available. And when I'm available, it's not like they're sitting there waiting for me to be available, right? So and I realized that I was not okay with that. that I wanted to spend time with them, and I didn't. And it's not that, and I couldn't reasonably expect them to just be sitting waiting for me to be available once my work was done. And so that's a balance I'm trying to build in terms of time that I spend doing work that I enjoy and time with my family that I also enjoy.
Yeah, and so if I may interject, I think the other important part about your family, and we know this from our previous chat, that you actually have an 11-year-old daughter and you choose to homeschool her. I know that you have a supportive ecosystem to do that, but that is just fantastic. So your daughter's never been to a traditional physical school, and all that she knows today is a summation of what your other family members have sort of taught her, and that's not easy, right? So can you throw some light on how you've managed to do that, because that's a big part of the balance that we spoke of a little bit earlier?
Sure. No, that is certainly an interesting part of my life, and it's a choice that we made when, maybe even before she was born. My husband was very clear that he didn't want to send her to school, and I was fine with that. And we had various reasons for doing that, but I think so far it's worked out very well. There is, especially in today's day and age, there are so many resources available. Maybe it wouldn't have been as easy to do this when I was a little child, but today with the internet and with the resources that are available, it's not challenging at all in terms of finding the resources that you need to teach. Then it comes to, so the resources are available, the access is there, and all of that is there. Then comes the time that you need to teach. What I've heard from others and what I've seen, firsthand with my daughter, is that kids are naturally curious and they want to know stuff and they want to learn and they want to understand things, and that's really an education. I think an education goes way beyond what you learn in school from your books, right? And so and I want her to have that curious mind, and I want her to to indulge that curiosity and learn to find the answers on her own, in a world where, like today, where there is just so much available. It's important that you learn to find those answers yourself, and just you know learning the questions and answers by heart from a particular guidebook and putting them down in an exam paper is really, I don't think, is really equipping kids today to live in the world, the world that is changing so rapidly, right? And in the world of the I don't know what the world is going to look like 10 years from now, right? I mean, 2 years ago we wouldn't have imagined where we are today, right? I don't know where things are going to be. So they have resilience. The point you were talking about earlier is so important, and it's very important to inculcate these things. And it's and I think we try to teach her, learn together with her. There are things, there are concepts that we need to learn sometimes before we are able to teach her, and so we take the time to do that. And I'm not saying that that's the right way for everyone, but I think it's a great fit for us as a family. And honestly, I feel less pressured with regard to her education than many of my friends who send their kids to school, because there is kind of an external force which is demanding that you do certain things in a certain way and a certain time. We have relative flexibility in terms of how we approach things.
Also, not much changed for you guys during the pandemic, clearly, because everyone was suddenly straddled. Everyone, parents with children were like, oh, what are we going to do with the kids now? But for you, it was probably very seamless, right?
Yes, it was. It was, because we've done it online. We've done work online and all these years. So like nothing much changed for us.
That's very interesting. Thank you both. This was very interesting. This brings us to the end of the first segment. We're going to move on to the next segment. It's called the interrogation. We're hoping you can answer those questions very swiftly.
But this face then was like, okay.
Honestly and even inappropriately is okay. Yeah. So we're going to start off the first 5 questions with Jolly, and then we'll come to you, Fereshte. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Jolly, beginning with you, the one quality you look for when you are hiring somebody.
application of mind.
Okay. One law or section of the law that you see in 2021 and wonder, why is this even around?
Maybe the Contempt of Courts Act.
Okay. All right. If not a lawyer, you would be a dash.
I've been a few places before I got here, and I'm very happy where I am being a lawyer. I can't think of another thing I would rather.
Anything else? Fair enough. You can meet a woman from history for a meal. Whom do you choose to meet and why?
Since we are on the subject of women in law, maybe Cornelia Sorabji. I believe she was the first woman lawyer in India, maybe in elsewhere as well. I think it would be fascinating to meet with someone like her. And yeah.
Okay, super. Back to you, Fereshte. The one quality you look for in people when you're hiring.
I think it has to be a combination of aptitude and attitude.
All right. One law or section that you see in 2021 and go, why is this still around?
Sedition.
All right. If not a lawyer, you would be a dash.
Social worker in the justice delivery system.
Oh, wow. Okay. You can also meet a woman from history for a meal. Whom are you going to choose and why?
Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi. Fiercely spirited and willingness to enter the battlefield above all.
Wonderful. All right. Vikas is going to take over now. Vikas, over to you.
Okay. I'll continue you, Fereshte, then move to Jolly for this one. It's on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. How entrepreneurial do you think you are?
10, I think.
Okay, great. How much of a risk taker do you think you are?
For myself, 10. For a client, maybe 7.
Okay. How commercially sound do you think you are?
I would say that's a 10. I've put in 30 years in the profession. I hope I have that level of sound, certainly.
Yeah. How resilient do you think you are?
Pretty much. I would leave that to what you termed at the start of today as perception. I think, yeah.
Right. How optimistic do you think you are?
Hugely. I wouldn't attribute a number, but hugely optimistic.
Okay, great. How comfortable are you with technology?
I would give that, say, a 7, maybe 6 or 7. I frankly prefer not to spend too much time on things which other people can get done for me.
All right. So at least we found one that's not 10.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say 6 or 7.
Okay. How empathetic do you think you are?
Well, it really depends on so many different situations. I think it might be an 8.
Okay. How approachable do you think you are?
I really don't know. I would like to think hugely, but I really wouldn't know where that might end up. So I will have to get to the jury, as it were.
So we'll leave that to perception then.
I think certainly I wouldn't begin to get into that.
Okay. How creative do you think you are?
Oh, that I think is, in terms of legal arguments, I'd like to give myself a really high score, but in terms of artistically, I would say maybe 3 or 4. So I don't know what creative means. There's so many concepts to creative, right?
Okay. That's a very legal answer. That's a very lawyer-driven answer there.
Well.
Right. How competitive do you think you are?
I think pretty. I want to stay away from the numbers from the last comment that came at me. So let me just say pretty reasonably so.
Pretty far above 10, probably. Okay, Jolly, over to you. Scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. How entrepreneurial do you think you are?
8.
How much of a risk taker do you think you are?
Maybe a 7.
How commercially sound do you think you are?
Hopefully a 9 at least.
How resilient do you think you are?
A 10.
How optimistic do you think you are?
10. Absolutely.
How comfortable are you with technology?
8.5.
Well done, Charlie. Well done.
Fereshte is really calling you up, first of all. How empathetic do you think you are?
Very. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I think I perceive a lot of things which help me to be empathetic in conversation. I think it helps me to be empathetic. I think it helps. Yes. So I would say I would rate myself high on that one.
And how approachable do you think you are?
I hope I'm quite approachable. I'd like to give
One
myself
of the
a
most
10.
approachable, if I may jump in, she was one of the most approachable associates back in the day at Desai Davaji. So their perception has kicked in, and there's testimony also.
Thank you.
All right. How creative do you think you are?
8 or so. Yeah. I mean, different facets, like she said, like Fereshte said. Yeah.
Yeah. And how competitive do you think you are?
Very. Yeah. It's right up there.
All right. Super. Tanisha, have you got a story there?
No.
Okay.
Not
All right.
All right. We go back to Fereshte for the next couple of questions. Fereshte, standing your ground is easy because?
I live by the courage of my convictions.
All right. What are the top 3 virtues you would say should exist in order to be able to navigate the legal world with ease?
I think that should be integrity, diligence, and sincerity.
Okay. A book or a movie that you highly recommend and your biggest learning or takeaway from it?
You want a book or a movie, is that right?
That's right.
Well, in terms of a book, I would think it has to be The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Okay.
Takeaway is tactical strategy all the way. Very interesting, yeah.
Okay, super. What is the best advice you've ever received?
There is no glass ceiling.
Nice. And who did this come from?
My mother is a lawyer.
Okay. And she said this to you?
That's right.
Okay, super. Where will we find you on a weekend, Fereshte?
In the water somewhere, poolside beach.
Nice.
Okay.
Guys, what is your go-to comfort food?
I think it has to be dark chocolate without a question.
Me too.
There we are. Great minds think alike.
Is it the one which has cacao nibs and orange and all of that infused also, or you just like plain dark chocolate?
Actually, sometimes 100%.
Ooh, that's intense. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. What is your favorite childhood ritual that you probably enjoyed with your siblings and parents and all?
I think it was the Western classical concerts that would happen in Mumbai. I'm talking about the 70s. The lure, incidentally, was the ice cream in the interval.
And where would these happen? Because in the 70s, there was, I'm sure there was an audience, but a smaller audience for these, right?
I think it was pretty house full from what I remember from that day. And it was in a place in Marine Lines called Patkar Hall.
Right, okay.
It was absolutely brilliant. And I have the fondest memories of that. And it is very interesting because, you grow up thinking that ice cream was everything in life. Little to know that actually that is the music that will stay with you forever. It becomes your go-to in life. So this is just, I'm just giving you any one of these memories, but this is certainly one of my big favorite memories. And it's interesting how that gets imprinted in you. But yeah, that is my favorite memory, the Western classical concerts in Patkar Hall in Mumbai. We have the NCPA today, but back
Yes.
then it wasn't there. So, that was our make do.
That is an endearing share. Thank you. All right. What was the last thing you Googled?
Art. I'm very big into art.
All right. Okay. If you had a warning label, what would yours say?
You don't want to know that. I think it should be disturb at your own peril or something like that.
All right. What is something
I think that answers the approachable question from earlier.
In different circumstances. That's why I said it really does depend.
Something that immediately brings a smile to your face, Fereshte?
I think that is, for me, it is Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean, as he is known to the world at large. I am absolutely taken by that's the one big smile for me. Rowan Atkinson, Mr. Bean is just it's a different world for me. It transports me.
Have you watched his Blackadder stuff from long time ago?
Absolutely, everything that there is it's just the best ever. Yeah.
All right.
I'm not talking smile, I'm talking laugh, like not just smile, it's like crazy laugh. Yeah.
All right. The last question for you, Fereshte. What did the lockdown and 2020 teach you?
I think it was certainly humbling in many respects. And most importantly, it perhaps retaught us to cherish togetherness. Be that with friends, be that with colleagues, be that with anyone and everybody that you've inevitably, I'm sure each one of us has found ourselves reaching out to people that we haven't been in touch with for a long time. I think it is really that connect that we have with everybody that we know, which is just so important, which we just so took for granted. And suddenly all of that was taken away. And I think everything that it's taught us, including how to navigate the crises, I think it's a huge crisis for so many. It has been extremely important lesson, and I do think that it has dramatically changed the way I view life in any event. Certainly dramatically altered my thinking. And priorities as well, and priorities clearly.
That's true. Thank you for sharing that. That brings us to the end of the interrogation for you. We'll switch to Jolly. Jolly, back to you. Standing your ground is easy because?
You know why you are there.
All right. Top 3 virtues to navigate the legal world in your view?
Hard work, and legal knowledge.
All right. A book or a movie you highly recommend and your biggest learning or takeaway from it?
A book that I've read recently that has stayed with me is a book called Doing Justice by Preet Bharara.
Okay.
It's been memorable, and I intend to read it again. That's a book that I would recommend. It kind of reminded me about why I became a lawyer, and it was good. Movie, I can't remember the last one I've watched, honestly. So I'm
my Netflix password is
yeah. So my daughter and I currently watching Madam Secretary. So we're running through the series.
Enjoying that. Okay. What is the best advice you've ever received, Jolly?
You can do anything you want.
And whom did it come from?
My oldest brother.
Oh, nice. All right. Where will we find you on a weekend?
Likely to be at home, especially since the lockdown.
Yeah.
But yeah, most weekends at home, catching up on sleep and time with family.
Nice. Food-wise, what is your comfort go-to food?
Biryani, a well-made biryani, I enjoy that.
All right. What is your favorite childhood ritual? Again, like with family, siblings, like that.
That's an interesting question. I can't. Okay, so one thing that every Sunday we would all go to church. We would go together and come back together, and so I guess that counts as a ritual of sorts, because there was, unless you were sick and you were not able to go, we would always go. So I thoroughly I remember that, and I enjoy that, those memories and the singing and all of that we would do together. Is a great memory that I have.
Wonderful. Okay. What was the last thing you Googled?
I just checked when you asked Fereshte. I think my daughter was reading something and she asked me, what's a French beard? So I was trying to show her what a French beard was.
Right.
So that's the last thing I Googled.
Something that instantly brings a smile to your face, Jolly.
I think that would be my daughter, at all times. Yes.
Super. If you had a warning label, what would yours say?
I hope I don't carry a warning label. I don't think so. Nope.
No warning label.
Nope. I don't think there is.
That's fair. Okay. What did the lockdown and 2020 teach you?
I always knew it, but it taught me, I mean, if I didn't know it, it kind of instilled it in me that, you have zero control over how things pan out. So that's one thing it taught me. And two is you whatever situations arise, we will gloriously adapt to whatever those circumstances are. So it was easier for me at some levels, but because I had worked from home for a while already, partly work from home, partly going to the office. Now it's an exclusive working from home. So it's, and the whole world is doing that, right? I mean, all of us have adapted. And so, things change, things are not in your control, and you can adapt no matter what happens. So that's a wonderful thing to know and remember.
All right. That brings us to the end of your interrogation. Thank you, Jolly. Thank you both. That was very well played. Taking it now to the last and the third segment of this interview, we are now going to request each of you to talk about a memory or show us something that is extremely precious to you, either just something that someone's given or in the professional journey that you've had. It's your kind of go back to thing to build that resilience we spoke of, to bust those self-limiting beliefs we talked of earlier. So we probably ask you first, Fereshte, is there something you have to show us, or would you like to share a memory?
Well, let me talk about perhaps one of my more memorable court experiences.
Sure.
It goes back to the last decade, where after years of having obviously been in the courts and obviously litigating against multiple counsels across the board and across courts in India, and of course having appeared overseas as well, I had the opportunity to in fact oppose somebody who I consider numero uno, and I think the world at large would agree with that. And I'm talking about none other than Fereshte Sethna. And I had the opportunity to appear against him after the first round had been lost by my opponent, who was represented by the advocate, a former advocate general of the state of Karnataka. This was a litigation in the High Court of Karnataka. And obviously, my opponent wanted to bring in the best available in the country. And that was Fereshte Sethna. And this was the appeal court in the Karnataka High Court. It was an argument that ran for near about 3 hours. And at the end of it, the outcome was that I did succeed in that argument. I have that judgment in my favor. That, for me, was certainly one of the most memorable times in court. It was not just having succeeded there, but also having succeeded against somebody that I hold in the highest esteem, that I've had the privilege of working with, and as I would say, often you learn at the feet of the master. Yes, I was several years down the road in the profession when I first encountered and had the opportunity, the privilege to work with him. And having had that privilege and having worked with him for several years before I had the chance to, and it's his client, obviously, who asked that he come in and appear, but having had the opportunity to appear against Harish, none other than Harish in court, and having effectively delivered for that client, as far as I was concerned, is for me the most memorable experience to date. I have to say that.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. That actually, I have goosebumps Fereshte as you were talking. So, yeah, I can only imagine. Thank you.
How old were you back then when you won that case?
Should have been 42, I think, 43, 42. Wow.
All right. Thanks. Jolly, how about you?
That's an interesting question. So every, I don't, objects don't hold a lot of meaning to me. So I'm going to be talking about an experience as well. And every deal that I've done, every transaction that I've done is memorable for various reasons. But I think in terms of, something that I would look back to and kind of find inspiration from is shortly after, I took some time off when my daughter was born, and I went back to work when she was about 7 months old. And when I did, I went back on the condition, I spoke with my managing partner at the time, and I said, I can come back to work if you can let me work from home a couple of days a week. I can't commute every day, and I need to spend some time with my child. And he said, okay, let's try it out. It's an experiment. We've never done this before, but let's try this out. So, and I went back to work, and I started working from home, and then there was a transaction that came up which involved a due diligence of a port. And a port is, every due diligence has its complexities, but a port was a unique one. And my managing partner spoke to me and said, I want you to handle this, and I want, this is a test of sorts to see whether you are able to do today what you could do earlier as well. And I remember, I think that we worked on the diligence for a couple of months. And it was by far the toughest thing I've done with a less than a year-old baby. And he said, you have a pick of associates, you can work with whoever you want, do what you want, but get the job done and get it done well. I think I went for about 2 months with only 3 hours of sleep a day, consistently. But we had a sensible report at the end. I worked with a bunch of very, committed, amazing team to deliver on that. But all of them needed feedback, and all of them, there was a lot of work for me to do. And then one person wasn't able to deliver on what they were supposed to do because they got pulled into something else. And so I had to do property. I had to look at the property section myself, which was very large and complex for a port. It was one of the most challenging things I've done, and one of the most challenging phases of my career. But I got through it, and we delivered a report, which is, I was later told is, by the client that, it's almost a reference point to them for all the facts in relation to that port, which it was a challenging thing to deliver. And, so today when I look back, I think I wonder how I did it, and I don't know how I actually delivered on it. But I know today that if I did that, I can do anything. There's nothing that you can throw at me which I can't deliver on. But that's very memorable. It wasn't the easy. It was one of the hardest things I've done, but it stands me in good stead and gives me confidence today for anything that anybody throws at me.
That's actually a great story. And we know that, especially after motherhood and that maternity break, coming back it's almost like your own rebirth in the workspace, is what a lot of women who go back to the workforce after that break say. And you're battling things like guilt, you're questioning whether this is the right thing to do, and then you want to do justice by your work. So it's a very, very tightrope to walk. And I'm so glad to hear, Jolly, that you did so well, and of course, outdid yourself. So well done, you.
Thank you.
Right. So that brings us to the end of this segment. It has been wonderful talking to the both of you. We've, collected a lot of pearls of wisdom, both from you, Fereshte and Jolly, and your respective journeys. Thank you for all your honesty and candidness on the show today. And like we've enjoyed the chat, I'm sure there'll be a lot more people who will watch subsequently, and, lots to learn from this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanisha. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Jolly. It's been wonderful doing this with you.
Same here, Fereshte. Lovely to meet you and great to be on the show. Thank you so much, Vikas and Tanisha.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jolly. Thanks, Fereshte.
Have a wonderful Sunday evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.